Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's topic is articulation. The way you use your articulation significantly improves your communication skills while you're performing. It makes your piece come alive and make it much more fun to play and to listen to. It's crucial to have the technique of articulation sorted, or your single tonguing, double tonguing, triple tonguing, using different vowels perhaps, because then you have access to it all the time. It's just like having a good finger technique when you then look at difficult passages that don't actually seem that difficult. And the tongue is a muscle, so it needs to be trained regularly as well, so that you're always in good shape. In order to achieve clear articulation, the tongue movement needs to be clear, precise and light. Let's first look at exactly where the tongue should be placed to start with. It is essential that we use only the tip of our tongue for articulation. The rest of the tongue stays relaxed in the back of your mouth. Don't also push the tongue down or anything to create more room. If your lower jaw is relaxed, your tongue will be relaxed too. There's nothing else to do about it. We place the tip of our tongue on the gum right behind your teeth, on that ridge there. And then let's say T. And notice actually how little the tongue moves. In fact, a lot of tonguing problems occur when you try to move your tongue in some sort of exaggerated way. Instead, move your tongue exactly as you do when you speak. Tea. If you're having a cup of tea. Actually, say that once with your eyes closed so you can really feel what your tongue is doing. Tea. It kind of starts at the front, then it just comes down and back slightly. But the movement isn't very big, is it? To keep the movement light and efficient, it's also important to use the consonant T rather than a D, like D, D. It's not that common these days anymore. I mean, a few people are trained to use D a lot of the time. But if you actually say D, D, there's so much more effort actually, using more like the first centimeter or so of your tongue rather than just the tip. And that makes the whole movement rather sluggish. So for clear and crisp articulation, use T. T, T, ta. French use tu a lot as well, which actually promotes a really good embouchure as well. We'll talk about using different vowels later as well. But let's now look at how to practice this on the flute. I have two books that I like to use when practicing articulation. One is the Trevor Wye book on articulation. Might be in a separate one. This is actually a German version that I have. Or in the book of 6, the combined book that he did as well. The other book that I like is by my teacher, Robert Winn, his articulation book. But you don't have to use a book. You could just play a scale, you know. For example, if you look at F major, I just used T, T, T. I think T or T are the two best ones to use for a really good staccato. And notice how I'm not doing anything extra. It really helps also closing your eyes when you practice this exercise, just because that way you're not distracted by anything, but you focus more on the sensation of how the tongue feels in your mouth. Talking about not using any exaggerated movements in the tongue, it is also important to remember that you do not make your sound here. Your tongue does not produce your sound. Sound comes from the diaphragm. So the moment you release the air is the same time when you articulate. But of course, the sound comes from the diaphragm, and the tongue really just adds definition and clarity to the beginning. Also keep in mind that you don't ever stop the sound with the tongue. Leave it open, and the air speed will be responsible for the length of the note. For that, it's really good actually to start any practice session. The first thing I would always do would be this little diaphragm exercise, where I don't use any tonguing whatsoever, but I just go. This is a really excellent exercise because the thing you need most for a good sound is this clear connection starting from the diaphragm and right into the flute. If that works, then that's literally all you need as a little warm-up if you're tight for time. So that is where your sound comes from. Start with that exercise, with the diaphragm exercise, and then you can do the same one. It's in the Trevor Wye book as well. It's in quite a few flute practice books. And then add the tongue to it. This way it sounds much more refined rather than just using the diaphragm. But with the diaphragm, I'm doing just the same. And the same second that I release the tongue, I release the air from the diaphragm as well. Try this for now. Literally use any scale, slow scale. Play it really slowly so you can pay attention to what your tongue is doing. If you want to use the Trevor Wye book, he starts with this exercise as well that I just demonstrated. He then goes actually into a lot of variations of this, which is really, really useful. Cramming two T's behind each other, as in and the other way around, and so on and so forth, which is really actually much more difficult than it sounds. Because you have to be very precise with the movement, but it's a fantastic exercise. And if you're not used to practicing your tonguing that way, after a few minutes, you'll probably feel quite tired. Your tongue will be tired, but that's completely normal. Your tongue is a muscle and it needs to be trained. Just like if you go to the gym, and you haven't been in a while, then start slowly. So I think 5 or 10 minutes is absolutely plenty. Lots of variations on that exercise. If you want to use the Robert Winn book, he has got lots of lovely tunes here from, different repertoire, piano repertoire, symphonic repertoire, anything really. So nice tunes. Got some Chopin here at the beginning. Again, very, very simple, but that's important because you need to focus just on what the tongue is doing. So, before I delve any further into the subject and go on to double tonguing, triple tonguing, vowels, practice this for a little bit. Have a look at your single tonguing. Let me know in the comments below if you have any questions about it, anything you're struggling with particularly. And then in my next video, I will talk about double tonguing. See you then. Happy practicing.